Hey guys, welcome back to the garden. Today we are potting up some tomatillos as well as starting some companion plants for tomatoes. Let's get into it. Weed. We've got roots, we've got a couple sets of true leaves, but I just learned this. Did you know that we can plant these deep just like we do tomatoes? So it's gonna make roots all along this stem. To do that, we're just gonna bury them deep. Now I'm gonna batch these out. So again, we're just going to support the stem as we pop them out. Come on. There we go. You'll notice as I'm taking them out, they're sticking together. They're sticking together, so the roots are all formed in there. Now I'm just going to put them at an angle. And then just like our tomatoes, we'll use a leaf. I'll support with a leaf, but I'm just gonna fill in. Today's a little bit chilly, so I'm gonna bring everything inside. All my warm weather crops, my tomatoes, my peppers. This is looking exceptionally dry. That looks good. We're gonna give it a little water. Because these aren't seeds, they're actually plants now, it's okay to water from above. This is so dry. I should have pre-moistened the soil, but I wasn't thinking. And then I'm just making sure nothing has its leaves trapped under the soil where they'll rot. But that's it for tomatillos. Ta-da! So companion plants just means that plants that like to grow together. So we're looking for things that have the same needs and requirements, or maybe complementary. Let me explain. They have to have the same water requirements because you can't put a desert plant next to a plant that needs a ton of water. Those are gonna rot the roots of the desert, and you're gonna be too dry for the one that needs lots of water, so they're not gonna be happy. So they need about the same amount of moisture levels, but you don't want to put two really heavy feeders next to each other because those are not going to be compatible. They're going to be competing for food. So companion plants for tomatoes, my favorite is basil and marigolds. I try to put an herb and a flower with every grouping of my companion plants, and this way I bring in pollinators with the flowers, and the herbs I just like to eat. But in this case, basil also provides protection. A lot of herbs will provide some protection to various crops. Marigolds have been shown to suppress nematodes, which is a soil-borne microorganism. They're super small, but they attack the roots of tomatoes and other plants, and it keeps them from being able to absorb the nutrients in the soil. So we don't want them, and marigolds help keep them away. So those are really great. I also like to cut marigolds to make bouquets, so it's a win-win-win for me. Well, hello. This is basil. This basil plant, I don't know if you can see the whole weirdness of it. I gotta be careful because I broke the pot. Ow. I broke the pot. This basil plant is 3 years old, and it is pouting because it doesn't like being in this pot. So I'm going to show you how to propagate it. Basil is one of the, there we go. Basil is one of the many companion plants. Excuse me. There. Basil is one of the many companion plants I use with my tomatoes every year, and it's dead simple to propagate. It is the first thing I learned how to propagate. Let me show you how. All right, first, I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller, but every single one of these little branches where I don't know if you can see that there's like these little, they're called nodes, but every one of these little bumps is a node, and that's where it can put out new growth, roots, etc. I'm just gonna cut this whole branch off because it's kind of ridiculous. And I would not propagate the entire bush at once. I'm gonna leave some there so that if something goes wrong, I can try again. Then I'm gonna just cut one of these branches off. Okay. I'm gonna strip the leaves. So we want just a few leaves left on top. The leaves you take off, you can 100% use for cooking. All right, so we're just gonna take the leaves off the bottom. And really, I'm just trying to leave the leaves on the top, like 2 or 3 sets of leaves. Really, 2 is probably fine. And I don't want to rip. I'm using my fingernails again to just kind of, I don't know if I can show you, but I'm just kind of nipping it off. I don't want to damage anything in those cells. So that's how many leaves I'm leaving on. And I'm going to cut off all the brown part of the stem. But you don't want any little leaves below the surface of the water or they'll rot and cause you problems. Okay, and then I just put this in a jar with clean water, and I usually put it in my kitchen window, which is north facing, and in about 2 weeks I'll have roots. And there is no end to how much you can do this. As I said, this is about 3 years old. I've probably made 200 plants off of this and given them away to friends and family. This was the first one I learned on, but you can do this on almost any plant. I have found that it's a little bit easier for things like rosemary. When I try to do it in water, it's supposed to be easy, but every single time I do it, it rots. But right now I'm doing an experiment where I put it in some seed starting mix, just with a little bit of light on top, you know, some grow lights, keep it well watered. And so far, about half of them have rooted, so I think that's good. All right. The key here is this water is nice and clear, and in about 2 days, I'll change the water out. So every 2 days, I'm gonna change and put fresh water in. For me, it's pretty simple. It's a habit at this point that up at the top of the sink, dump what's there, put in fresh. Now these, I'm not gonna get to these right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give this a fresh cut and directly in the water. And then I'll get to these in a little bit after we're done here. And those will be good to go. And we should have a bunch of new plants in just a couple weeks. Now this is still pretty good. This is good for pesto. I just dropped it. Obviously wash it first. But these are great for pesto. They're great for any dish you want. I typically make a quick pesto and pop it in the freezer in just little ice cube trays so that I can use it for my cooking anytime. I'm gonna put this inside. Alrighty. Now let's say you don't feel like propagating your own basil. That's fair. I didn't do it until I'd been gardening, I don't know, a decade or so. Easy to start from seeds. This time I'm gonna start some purple because I don't have any purple and it's pretty. So first we're gonna make markers for everything. I'm gonna do some basil and some marigolds. So some companion plants for my my tomatoes. I'll plant these all with them. Like, I'm a little colorblind, but that's purple, right? It says red Reuben, but that's purple. I love these little seed trays. They have really big holes at the bottom to make it easy to push stuff out. But it also means that sometimes I get big air pockets in there. So I like to give it a little pre-smush just to, you know, make sure we don't have giant air pockets. There's not a lot of soil in these to start off with. Okay. It's looking pretty good. All right. Remember our rule of thumb. However big the seed is, 2 to 3 times the depth is where we plant it. Basil seeds are small. They're not as tiny as like poppy seeds. But I'm just gonna sew these on top. I'm gonna try to put 3 in each one. They're small, so I may not be perfect. That one got like 5. And I try to put them in kind of opposite corners from each other. And this just helps me ensure that I get something growing in the cells. Now, since the basil is super tiny, I just do a little, I call it a scriggle scraggle, a little scriggle scraggle. Just kind of, I'm using my little marker to just give it a little rake, just a little bit, just to mix up the top 1/8 inch or so of surface. Press it back down. And then we'll bottom water all these. I can hear some birds. All right. As soon as we get them going. I'll put the tags towards you, but I don't know what they say. Oh, okay. That's the order. Marigold seeds are probably the easiest to identify. They have that black and white, half black, half white. Really fun to see. All right, since these are super easy to see, oh, how deep are you? 1/4 inch, yeah? Makes sense. They're kind of easy to play with. I play with all my stuff, let's be honest. Okay, that's probably way too many. Let's put a few of you. We don't need 5 per one. They're gonna struggle with that. But 2 in each one would be fine. That one has 4. There. A little mixy mix. Simple enough. The reason I'm pushing it back down after I just made it fluffy and kind of mixed it in is that ensures good soil contact with the seed, which means it's much more likely to grow and give me a good plant. All right, let's get it going. Last one, key lime. Looks great. Now let's give it a little water. You can top water, but it's really tricky because you see how things want to float. Now, because the marigold seeds are a little bit bigger, I could get away with top watering like this, but the basil seeds are quite small. So I'm going to put a fair amount of water in. Now, my table is kind of slanted this way. And then I'm just going to let them soak up the water for about, 20-30 minutes. Dump out the water and bring everything inside so it can stay warm. This week's garden chores. It's time to start fertilizing the citrus. I'm using Citratone and just working it in about the top inch or so of the soil, making sure I get every tree. Keep an eye on the temperature. If it drops below 50, bring in those warm weather seedlings. Keep seedlings well watered to increase germination. My pea trellis needed some stabilization, so I used some twine, bamboo stakes, and added diagonals, which really stabilized it. You have to tie every upright in with a diagonal to make it strong.